Norwegian Wood is the first book I've ever read from Haruki Murakami. And when I finished reading it, I cried a lot. As I was reading the book, I was greatly comforted. I read it during the pandemic when I was facing a lot of uncertainties in my life. And I guess I resonated with a lot of quotes from Norwegian Wood. Right now, I guess I honestly can't remember much of the specifics. Honestly, up to this day, I'm honestly kind of scared of reading it again because it might bring a lot of memories from the pandemic. But I just remember the feeling of being appreciative of the book. By the first time that I read it, I already noticed the strange way of how Murakami writes. He described women in a certain way. And at first, I thought that the way the female characters were described were simply because of how the male characters were written, with a specific personality of noticing things that I probably wouldn't, because I just wouldn't fixate on those. And so I guess I approached it with an open-mindedness. Maybe this is what is considered normal for guys. And so I had a lot of thoughts, I had a lot of questions. After all, I hadn't really read much from the perspective of men because when I was a teenager, I remember reading books from Marilu, Veronica Roth. So I would usually be more exposed to the perspective of women, also because I'm a woman myself. It was interesting for me to read all of that. I bought more books by Murakami because I was so interested with his writing style. It's just that the way Murakami writes has this certain vivid imagery, and oftentimes you would feel like you're in it. Like you are the character. Even if you don't feel like you're the character, you would feel what the character is feeling. And I think that's the main reason why a lot of people like Murakami. I also like that writing style too. And that's a great way for aspiring writers to, try to learn from. I've actually read this before, that Haruki Murakami is unfortunately a really good writer, and I honestly couldn't agree more. He is indeed unfortunately a good writer. Let's go back to the timeline. So after reading Norwegian Wood, I came across Kafka on the Shore, so I bought more books. Then I also bought the rest because I was really interested in his writing style. I wanted to be comforted by more of his books and explore his writing, and so I did. If I'm not mistaken, Kafka on the Shore was the second book that I read. I remember this imagery of Kafka being inside of a sphere and the feelings that he was feeling inside of it. At that time, I felt like I was in the same sphere. So like the main character, I was navigating a lot of this internal conflicts. I was trying to make sense of the uncertainties that the pandemic presented. And so Kafka on the Shore became very close to my heart. By the second book, I also noticed the same type of descriptions, and I think you'd know what I mean by descriptions. I guess I just kind of went through all that reading Murakami like that, and then I read Men Without Women, and then the time that I got finally fed up was when I read The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. By the time that I read that book, I think the world was already kind of starting to recover, and so I guess at that time I was also kind of outgrowing Murakami's work, although that was only the fourth book that I was reading from, his works, because I couldn't stand the way that the female characters were described. Also, I guess I got tired of seeing the same themes. Do you know the feeling of seeing the same actor in different movies but playing the same type of role? but the actor is presented as different people, but you know that the character is, still the same type that the actor is playing. Anyway, so that's how I felt. And so, college started again, face-to-face classes, and so I stopped. A little bit later, I forgot which year it was, but I was in college, and I think it was the time when I could sleep better. And I read After Dark, and I loved it. Being someone who had trouble sleeping, I resonated a lot with the main character, and I continued reading again his books. When I graduated, I started with first person singular, or I think it was After the Quake. And then Hear the Wind Sing, then Pinball.
You've read this book. Do you remember the twins? I really hate their characters because their characters were so superficial. Their characters were just so submissive, and I really, really hated that. I thought that I was going to discover something profound about the book, and of course, like always, Haruki Murakami's works are always dreamy, always have these elements that would make you think. But then I just could not ignore those twins. And especially when this was his first book, Her the Wind Thing was his first book. Her the Wind Thing was basically his debut novel. And it's like you would realize how it all started.
Then The Elephant Vanishes, which reminded me of the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, by the way, which years later I haven't finished yet. And so my thoughts about him kind of started to come together, and I just regretted buying a lot of books from him. I think it's not only because of the years that I became certain about my opinion of Haruki Murakami. I think it's also because I read more books from him, because I feel like, I've been reading his books, I've been kind of getting to know him and his writing style. I wouldn't say used to those descriptions. I just started to expect it from him because I was reading them like over and over from a lot of his books. You would just realize that the characters are not simply the characters anymore. I'm referring to the men. They're simply not written because they were separate from the author, but they started to feel like they are kind of the author themselves. And so because of that, it's not only the characters that are speaking, but you'd realize it's often Murakami himself. And so these fixations, these objectifications, honestly, it gets tiring. As of now, I still haven't finished The Elephant Vanishes. I'm still not sure whether I'll finish it or not. As for the other books, I'm not sure if I'm going to sell them to my friend who recommended him to me. And fun fact about this friend didn't even read Murakami's books and just recommended them to me without reading them herself. And so maybe I think I'll try selling them to her instead, so I can get some of my money back. As much as I wanted to finish Murakami's books first, since I already bought them and I have a lot of them still piled up, I still decided to hit pause on them indefinitely until further notice. I just couldn't live in the same headspace anymore. And suddenly, it's like that headspace has become your world somehow. And honestly, it's fine, I think, as long as the author also diversifies the way they write, or they try to separate from the characters as much as possible. I wanted to explore more authors, so I decided to diversify my reading list. I ordered books from Margaret Atwood, from Dostoevsky, from Mieko Kawakami, from Vladimir Nabokov. I guess that's what I learned from all of this, is to diversify your reading list, basically. And I also learned that if I ever write a novel in the future, I want to be able to separate myself from the characters as much as possible. Separate myself in a way that the characters become themselves. There should be boundaries. They should not be you. Just in a way that would sometimes contradict you. Like if you're a certain way, you would want your character to be the opposite of you. But yeah, even so, I'm, grateful that those two books that I mentioned earlier, Norwegian Wood and Kafka on the Shore, were there in a time when I was navigating a lot of things. I think I learned a lot from his writing style too. What I'm hoping from an author is exactly how Murakami paints this vivid imagery, how he paints the feelings of the characters in a way that could easily resonate with you, how he describes all these mundane moments of life that makes you appreciative. But at the same time, he also taught me about how a writer shouldn't write. How a writer should be able to be sensitive, that you make sure that you're not promoting the objectification of women. Because if it becomes consistent across all your works, I think there's a real problem with that. Because it's different when it's only one book. But if it's something that's always occurring, I think that's something that we have to start questioning. This July, I was able to finish Mieko Kawakami's Breast and Eggs. And I hear that Mieko Kawakami also looked up to Haruki Murakami and was also inspired by his writings. And Mieko Kawakami's work is just a breath of fresh air. They also have this interview together. In that interview, Kawakami asks Murakami a lot of questions regarding why in the world Murakami writes the way he does. And so if you want to find answers to that, you can by clicking the link in the description below. So after this video, I will be doing a wrap up for all the readings that I did this July 2025. Of course, one of the books that I will be talking about would be Breast and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. And I'm very excited to share my thoughts with you. And yeah, you would also be seeing books that you probably have not seen before. They are local books in my region, in my country, the Philippines. These books really do have something unique to offer, and I think that you'll really appreciate them too. Thank you very much for watching this video.